So hello there, you lovely people of the internet, and let's take a look at and actually discuss the tier set bonuses in tier 17 for druids. And let's start off with the balanced druid. And do you know what really annoys me when I'm reading set bonuses? It's when I read the set bonus and I think to myself, this doesn't look like a set bonus at all. This is just a hotfix. Because the 2-piece for balanced druids, it just reduces the cast time of Wrath and Starfire by 12%. Now that is a very welcomed change, but it's not a set bonus. This is just a hotfix because balanced druids, the cast times are rather obnoxious. And if you have an encounter that's not friendly for Starfall and requires a lot of movement, you're just not gonna do an awful lot of damage. Alright, it all comes down to this. Can you cast spells? Yes or no? Can you use Starfall and be effective? Yes or no? And then it decides if you're gonna do damage or not. So this, for me, is just not a set bonus. This is just a hotfix that should be baked into the class, and balanced druids should have been given something more interesting for the 2-piece set bonus. Now for the 4-piece, you have Wrath and Starfire casts, reduce the cooldown of Celestial Alignment by 3 seconds. Now we already had this set bonus in Mists of Pandaria, in the Throne of Thunder patch. Well, what was it? 5.2? 5.2, yeah, that was Throne of Thunder. This was an actual set bonus, but it was later changed. Why? Because that means that if you have this, well, you shouldn't really use Incarnation, because with Incarnation, you want to line it up with Celestial Alignment. Now, if every Wrath and Starfire reduces the cooldown of Celestial Alignment by 3 seconds, they won't align. They will align once at the beginning of a fight, and they will never align. Alright, you would have to delay the usage of Celestial Alignment, which completely neuters this set bonus. So it pretty much forces you to either use Soul of the Forest or Force of Nature once you get the 4 set bonus. I hope they changed this. I hope this isn't in the game, because if this is an incredibly stupid set bonus, because it just doesn't work with your talents. That just doesn't make an awful lot of sense, does it? So that's the Boomkin. Let's talk about the Feral Druids. And even though the 2-piece set bonus for Ferals is slightly better than the one for Balanced Druids, it still feels like a hotfix, because dealing bleeding damage generates 1 energy. Now, once again, this is a hotfix, because Feral Druids have too much downtime. So you're just fixing the shit design of Feral Druids having 40% downtime on a single target fight. Alright, because they just don't have enough energy, so they're throwing rejuves around. Alright, once again, this feels more like a hotfix than an actual set bonus. And for the 4-piece, while Berserk is active, special attacks deal an additional 30% bleed damage to the target over 6 seconds. And while this isn't the worst of things, it's not that interesting, alright? You press Berserk and you get an additional buff on top of that. Yes, you are doing more damage, and the main thing this does, actually, is it balances the stats for Feral Druids. It pushes Mastery higher up in the priority list for single target damage for Feral Druids. This is what it does, alright? This is once again why it feels like a hotfix. Alright, because Feral Druids right now for single target you want crit. Crit is the boss, crit is the best stat you can get for single target, and Mastery is the worst stat. Alright, Mastery is complete shit for single target because bleeds are just not as strong as they were in Mists of Pandaria. But for cleaving, Mastery is the boss. Alright, so you want to get crit and Mastery so you're good at single target and cleave damage, but by getting that Mastery, you are crippling yourself on a single target fight. So this pushes Mastery higher up. This is what it does. Alright, because you're doing more bleed damage with your special attacks, it pushes Mastery higher up. So once again, this is kind of a hotfix to fix the shit stat design for Feral Druids. And this is really disappointing, because both of my damage specs have kind of shit set bonuses. That is rather disappointing. That's just disheartening, isn't it? Yes, it is. Now, moving to Guardian, alright? So this 2-piece bonus is while you have Tooth and Claw buff, Maul consumes 10 less energy. This gives you more energy to play around with, and it kind of synergizes with the 4-set bonus, which also means you can use, more of your active mitigation, which is always good, even though we don't really have problems with generating rage for our active mitigation. This will give us some more rage, which is not that bad. And the 4-set bonus is applying Tooth and Claw to a target, increases the healing of your next frenzied regeneration by 10%, stacks up to 3 times. And let me tell you why that's not interesting. If you have to heal yourself as a tank in a raid, you have bad healers, number 1. And number 2, Frenzied Regeneration doesn't heal for an awful lot. It doesn't. It's kind of shit. So buffing it by 30%, even though while it's welcomed, it's not that big. Alright, it is not that big. Now, even though the Guardian set bonuses are definitely better than the ones for Balance or Feral Druids, which are just hotfixes disguised as set bonuses, it feels very redundant. It feels like if you're a Guardian Druid, it doesn't really matter if you get your tier set or not. Alright, and tier set should be something exciting. You know, oh my god, I got my tier set, I'm gonna piss my pants. No, it's just like, maybe you should give it to the Restoration Druid, which is next on the list. Ha, see what I did there? So the 2-piece for Restoration Druids is Nature Swiftness, now works on the next 3 spellcasts. Now, and you can immediately see how this changes the way you play. Alright, this isn't a hotfix. We don't need more instant things. We don't, because we have Swiftmend. We can spec into Swiftmend in our talents, so we have continuous barrage of instant spells. We don't need this, but this gives us something more interesting, because it gives you the good old Healing Touch playstyle, rather than the full-on hots with couple of healing touches here and there, or the Dream of Cenarius rat spamming, where you pretty much don't use Healing Touch at all. So you can either go for the big hot style of play, and you just don't really care about the tier set, or you might go for the Dream of Cenarius playstyle, which in 6.1, will be buffed by 15%, because we're going to do 15% more damage thanks to Naturalist buffs. And we can now go towards the full-on Healing Touch playstyle, because Healing Touch, when glyphed, reduces the cooldown of Nature Swiftness. Now, what Nature Swiftness does, it makes your next 3 regrowths free and instant casts. So the more Healing Touches you get, the more Nature Swiftness you can use, and the more instant regrowths you will get, which can then be paired with the Regrowth glyph, which gives you a lot of burst healing, either on a tank or if someone is taking a lot of damage. And further on, it really goes together very well with the Forset bonus. So when you cast 2 sequential Healing Touch spells, the mana cost of your next wild growth is reduced by 25%. This further empowers this Healing Touch playstyle. Now, the more observant and perhaps cynical amongst you might have noticed that even though these are vastly superior to the Balance, Feral and Guardian set bonuses, they still could be considered a hotfix by some of you, because they focus on mana consumption. Alright? Restoration Druids, even though they have fantastic healing and they can cope with many different situations, they still have problems with mana every now and then. You can have full spirit gear and you might run out of mana when there is a more intense healing required. You know, there is a more intense healing period during a boss fight. So you might think, you know, this is just another hotfix. Yes, it is, but the way it's implemented is vastly superior to Balance and Feral. Okay, when you cast 2 sequential Healing Touches, you get reduced mana cost on Wild Growth. Further on, if you glyph Healing Touches, they will reduce the cooldown on Nature Swiftness, which allows you to cast 3 free and instant regrowths. Compare that to reduces the cast time of Wrath and Starfire by 12 seconds. I just fell asleep. Alright? It's interesting. It gives depth to the class rather than giving you a passive, you know, dealing bleed damage generates energy, which you're gonna do no matter what, because you always have bleeds on the target. With this, you have more depth. You can force some Healing Touches if you know you're gonna need that Nature Swiftness. Alright? You can cast those 2 Healing Touches back to back if you know you need to Wild Growth soon. Alright? This is interesting. This gives depth to the class rather than giving you passive shit you're gonna use anyway. You don't have to do anything. This doesn't give you any depth, you know, reducing cast time or, you know, some random energy generation that's just completely passive. This doesn't give you any depth whatsoever. Alright? This does, and this is why I like it more than the Feral, Balance, and even the Guardian tier sets. I think the Restoration Druid is looking very good with the tier set bonuses. But that's just my opinion. Give me your opinion in the comment section down below this video, and I shall see you next time. Bye-bye.